The logic behind our calendar is that it is a good solar calendar. Well, what do we mean by a good solar calendar? Well, calendar makers will tell you that a good solar calendar is a calendar such that on the same day of every year, the sun rises in the same place against the background of the fixed stars. This is what we mean when we say the sun is in Aries. We mean that at dawn, the constellation Aries is blotted out by the heliacal light of the rising sun. But the sun is this solar, masculine, Apollonian archetype. It is the archetype of the ego as God. It is the archetype of the center, the unity. The solar calendar is set up so that we do not have what is called a precession. A precession is where the days slip against the background of the fixed stars. The notion of our calendar is that it is an agricultural calendar, and we want our great agricultural holidays to always fall in the times of harvest and planting. So a solar year must be used. But what this does is it has an underlying assumption which is false and which has been inculcated into our psychology to detrimental ends. And it is this, that this obsession with fixing the solstices and the equinoxes against the fixed stars is the effort to build a structure on the very largest level, the level of the planet itself, to build a structure that is fixed, that is enduring. And the great pride of our calendar is that we say it does not slip. That means it's fixed and enduring. Well, you may not know that the reason it doesn't slip is because there's a fudge factor in it. We're all familiar with the fudge factor of leap year, that every 4 years we have to add a year to keep it okay. But how many of you knew that every century year divisible by 400 is also a leap year, even if it occurs out of sequence? The year 2000 will be such a leap year. It is a century year divisible by 400. So was 1600. And so in that case, you have a leap year, even though the previous or the following year may be a leap year. So there is a fudge factor in the high and mighty solar paternal calendar that keeps it on track. Well, somewhat facetiously, what I propose, at least as a thought model, is an entirely different year length, 384 days. Now, 384 days is an interesting number. It's 13 lunations, precisely 13 lunations. And so we would have, therefore, a need for a 13th month in the calendar. And I propose that the 13th month follow August and precede September and be called Remember. And the month of Remember will be a month of great mnemonic celebration and recovery of the past. It will be a celebration of the past. Well, okay, now we have 13 months. That's wonderful, but we have purchased this 13th month at the expense of 19 days that overshoot the solar year. What about that? Well, instead of viewing that as a problem, as it has always been viewed, let's view it as an opportunity. What happens if you use a day length 19 days longer than the solar year? Well, it means that the great festivals of the solar year, Easter, Christmas, the 4th of July, will, let's call it Independence Day so we don't confuse ourselves because it's going to move, that these great festivals will do what is called precess. Each year they will come 19 days later against the solar year than the year before. So in such a calendrical system, you would be, as a child, Christmas would occur, let us say, in winter. By the time you were in your middle teens, Christmas would be occurring in springtime. By the time you were in your mid-20s, Christmas would be occurring in high summer, and in your mid-30s it would occur again, it would occur in autumn. And through a life of 60 or 70 years, the solar festivals would migrate through the seasons. Well, this may seem trivial to you, and hey, it may be. But the psychology of it is that it's trying to build in at the highest level a truth which we have lost sight of, which is the idea that everything flows, that everything is impermanent, that flux is the only standard. Flux is the only thing you can depend on. If we gave ourselves permission at the highest and deepest psychological level, the place where we measure time and the spectacle of our life as spread out against the grid of the history that we live through, if we were to give that permission to be portrayed on a grid that emphasized flow, transience, change, and recursion, rather than this constipated solar square against the fixed stars, then what we are really doing, you see, is changing archetypes. We are changing archetypes. And what are we changing? We're changing the Apollonian solar paternalistic dominator archetype for the feminine, oceanic, intuitive, giving and taking archetype of flow and life and death and completion through change, rather than completion which seeks to stave off change and then is inevitably swept away and therefore somehow touched with pathos.